Hi, folks. Welcome to our weekly discussion of local history. Thank you again for joining me and for all your positive feedback and discussion and topic ideas. Um, did you see it? Did you see that wonderful eclipse that happened this week? If you're watching live, it was yesterday, so I'm still kind of coming off the high that we all got from it. Um, and I didn't realize how much it would, because we'd never been through it before, how much it would kind of impact us and how exciting it really would be. Um, and so I know we talked about it last week, but I don't know about you, but my perspective about this total eclipse, us being in the path of totality, has completely changed since actually experiencing it. Um, Actually, it completely changed within about 5 seconds yesterday, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with it in the hopes that you will record your experience with it. And I really didn't realize how important it would be to record to for future generations record the what happened yesterday here in East Aurora. Yeah, that we have a lot of TV coverage in Texas and on the path all the way up, but right here in our hometown and in each of your hometowns, if it's not East Aurora, it could be another town where you experienced it. Because as we know, yesterday it was a different experience within just a couple miles or even just a couple blocks from each other. So it's really important that people record what they saw and what they heard. What tends to happen with these sorts of events is we have them and then we move on. There was a lot of excitement yesterday and for months and years leading up to yesterday's event, and to the extent that maybe some of us are sick of talking about it. I know I saw a couple folks say we're glad it's over and we can move on with other things, and that's not the first time that's been said about an eclipse. Actually, in 1932, the Easter Advertiser had noted that now we can move on after they had a partial view of an eclipse that caused a great deal of excitement. However, I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that this was a really, really important event and how we can record it for future generations. Now, why is it an important event? It's not really, when you talk about history, it's not like, this affected anything politically or uh, how we operate as a society. It's just there's not really anything earth shattering about an eclipse, other than the fact that it brought, in what I saw, brought a lot of people together. Didn't matter your background or your geography or your age. That was the important thing I noticed yesterday. Um, we witnessed it just out in our neighborhood, and we had people in their 80s, and we had children, 2, 3, 4 years old, and both of those sets of people, whether you're in your 80s, 90s, or a toddler, or all of us in between, we're experiencing the same thing. We'd never seen one before, and especially here in East Aurora. So even if we had seen one, but most of us had never seen a full totality solar eclipse. So regardless of our age, we were all just as inexperienced as the person standing next to us, and we were all experiencing it in a really similar way. No one could there, there was no one there with vast experience. Age did not come with experience in this case because it's been so rare for an eclipse like this to happen in East Aurora. So that was one thing. I do think it brought a lot of folks together. And what it does do, and there's nothing wrong with this, whether you feel like it's not an earth shattering event that affects our politics or our history, it is a moment where we kind of took a step away from other things. What I did think about was that this also connected, in addition to connecting everybody who's here now, I felt this, and it might sound corny, and you're going to hear a lot of corny things from me today about the eclipse, uh, is I felt like it connected me to people in 1925 when the last total solar eclipse, the path of totality, came through East Aurora. As I was researching the impact of that eclipse on people and their reactions to it, I felt like I was constantly comparing myself to them and what their experience was, and how similar that experience was. Regardless of the technology that we have over the people in 1925, we have a very similar experience. And similarly, the next total solar eclipse where we're in the path of totality isn't going to come until 2144. None of us is going to be around for that one. How we're connected to the future as well. Those people are going to look back on our experience with the eclipse, and the fascination is the same. The fascination over the planets and our science and how this works in the spiritual. Some people felt something spiritual with it, something bigger than us. I felt that, I'll be honest. And so I feel that that crosses the time period, like it's like a time machine where it's this very similar feeling, whether you're in 1806, where there was the first one that we know about here in East Aurora, 1925, 2024, or 2144. Um, it's just a very similar experience. Now, I want to thank a viewer who was listening into last week's live stream, and I encouraged people to keep a journal of what was happening. And one of the people who was listening last week went. Our conversation spurred them to go look at their grandmother's journal. The grandmother had kept a journal. Now, the grandmother was Cora Rosen, and she and her husband were Roycrofters, and they lived up by the Roycroft. And she found the diary entry from 1925 here in East Aurora. Now, the East Aurora Advertiser had so much hype before the event actually happened in 1925. It was in January. And it's sad to say that after the event, clouds moved in. There was nobody saw anything in the sky other than it got really, really dark. Which, if you experienced yesterday, that was pretty dramatic. And that only happens in the path of totality, where it gets dark as night. And so that's what happened in 1925. And I did not realize how much that darkness impacted us, or how dramatic it was until I actually experienced it. And a lot of you probably have a very similar reaction to that. So I could relate to what was happening in 1925. Cora Rosen wrote in there about that, how it was greatly disappointing that they couldn't see the corona because the clouds had come in, but that it got dark as night, and that one of their daughters had seen a star. And so, what was fascinating to me about that diary entry, and the family members have given me permission to share it, and I've added it to an article that will be appearing in this week's Advertiser about the history of eclipses here in East Aurora, uh, is that they still thought it was a beautiful sight. They said it was a beautiful sight, and everything was dark as night, even though they couldn't see the corona. So I kept thinking back on that as we were. Well, first of all, the fact that we have that diary to counteract what was a rather unenthusiastic report in Easter Advertiser after the 1925 event, even though there was a lot of hype beforehand, was that they failed to tell us what actually happened. Love the Easter Advertiser, but the folks back in 1925 who were there did not really do a good job of telling us exactly what happened. They had like one little paragraph that said, great disappointment. We got our glasses. They had taken you could take glass and smoke the glass. They didn't have the fancy glasses like we have today. Um, they had those for nothing. And we got our glasses out for nothing. We smoked our glass for nothing, because the clouds came through, and it got dark, and that's about it. That's according to the advertiser. But we have the diary that says, well, yeah, it got dark, but that was pretty fascinating. And it really was. It was super fascinating. And I didn't have that perspective before I actually experienced it myself. So that's what I was thinking about as we were coming up to the time of totality here in East Aurora. Clouds had rolled in, very thick clouds, and I just kept thinking, oh my gosh, they went through this in 1925, and here we go again. We had 2 sunny days, perfect eclipse days, 2 days beforehand, and I thought, oh my gosh, here we go. And we're going to not be, I was just hoping that, as you all were, that we would have a better experience than our counterparts in 1925, and that it would truly be a more than a life, once in a lifetime opportunity here in East Aurora, because the one in 1925 had been dampened by the clouds that had rolled through. So, we're all standing around. We met out in the neighborhood. All the neighbors came out, young, old, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, we're just going to have to deal with the fact that we have clouds, and it'll be just like 1925. And thank goodness for that diary, because I thought, oh, it's still going to be amazing, even though we can't see the sun or the moon right now through the clouds. It's still going to be amazing. And so that part of that history helped me prepare for this eclipse, and that fact that it's still going to be amazing regardless of the fact that we won't be able to see it. So that was going through my mind. And what I did, in the last time I had told you that I suggested that you, instead of photographing the actual eclipse, because a lot of people would be, unless you're a professional photographer or something like that, that it's better to record the people around you. What were they doing? And that's so. As I was, we were out on the street. I'm like, I'm going to turn my. I took a lot of pictures, but I'm going to. And I went over to other neighborhoods to see if there were people out. Went to Hamlin Park to see if there were people out, and recorded all. Um, and so I took a lot of pictures, but when it got close to totality, I'm like, I need to videotape this. But what I did was, is I tried to listen to my own advice and the advice of other people who had said about experiencing an eclipse like this, is I kept my phone down by my chest so I could still see what was happening around. I did not want to be watching it through my phone, and it worked. I was very diligent about that. But as the totality came, what was great about the video, and a lot of you might have this on yours, is not what you see in the sky, but the reaction of people around you and what they were saying. There was this awestruck feeling as the air was changing. People were describing some of the wildlife differences. We didn't see a whole lot of that, but when it got really dark, really fast, and then I walked around my house, and I walked around the yard, and then I came just thinking, well, if nothing else, I'm going to record how dark it is and the reaction of the people around us. And I did see that off in the, they warned you about this, to watch the horizon, because you'll see the bright orange or red light at the horizon. So I'm like, well, that's what we'll get, Well, as I came back to the folks, we were all gathered around. I came back to them. All of a sudden, there was great excitement because we could see the actual sun and the corona. Totality was almost done. We were actually had less than a minute of totality left, and the clouds parted, um, and we could see it. And I had my camera in front of me, and I broke my rule right then. I did look up, I did get to experience it, but I zoomed right in. Now, I shared this video. I had a much longer video of the whole thing, but I shared the last part of it. And that's where I just shared that part because a lot of it was boring. I might upload the longer video, but I shared it on this Facebook page along with others, and I shared it around. But it was the best part of that whole thing, I think, was the reaction of the people around us. The There it is. Look, we had thought we would miss it, and I think that was the best part of this whole thing. The thing that was just that brought awe to me, that just I was so shocked that we had set ourselves up. All the kids too. We had told all the kids, don't be too excited. This is probably not going to happen because you're just going to see it get dark. Um, and for it to actually happen through the clouds was quite phenomenal, a surprise, and for it to happen just in the nick of time. I know folks at Knox Park got to see it, um, and but I do know some other folks in East Aurora who didn't get to see it until after the totality. They got to see the clouds parted after totality. And we were lucky enough here in the village, at least my part of the village, to see um, the totality, and the after, about a half hour after that, we got to see the whole thing as the sun came out from behind the moon. So quite amazing. So within those 2 seconds, we went from, I tell you, the one of my neighbors was showing me pictures of from their relative. They had relatives in West Seneca, and they were seeing the partiality of it as it was getting closer to totality, and it just made us feel worse. We're like, well, I'm glad they're getting to see it in West Seneca, but we don't get to see it. And then, literally 2 seconds before, 2 seconds after, my one friend said to me, "This is a picture from my family in West Seneca," and I was feeling down. the sky opened up and we saw it. And everybody was like, there it is. And the kids got all excited and we got our little moment there. And I really felt that that was actually a really important, great way, as much as we would have liked a clear day, a great way to experience the eclipse because we had not expected. It was the unexpected and it was the surprise of it. So why am I telling you all this? Well, this is all part of the story, our reaction to it, and the video that I posted. But it's just all the feelings that you had about it and recording where you were. One of the things that I struggled with researching previous eclipses is that we didn't have documentation of everyday people. The newspaper would cover it, but as I told you, the advertiser had just a very short paragraph about it after the fact. Buffalo newspapers covered it pretty extensively, but here locally in East Aurora, um, we do know there's at least one diary out there that explained what happened in their little neighborhood and what was happening right here in the village, and thank goodness for that. So I'm telling you this because all this story that I just told you, I spent last night writing in my journal, and I usually write for about 10-15 minutes of what happened during the day, but I purposely scheduled about 45 minutes, honestly, to an hour to write out every single detail of the day. Um, from the moment in the morning where we, saw a great sunrise and then the clouds rolled in and all the weather forecasters telling us that it probably wouldn't work, that Buffalo would be left out. And we thought, well, oh my gosh, we even thought about going west to try to catch it. Then we thought, well, we wanted to be home for it. Um, to that whole disappointment, the clouds rolling in, and even starting off where we didn't have a great shot at it. And as we got to totality, the sky was dark, so we couldn't even see clouds that were even up there. And we just figured that were going to miss it. To that excitement of actually getting to see it in the last 45 seconds of totality, put it all in my journal. Because I think people in 2144 here in East Aurora, if my journal's still around, are going to hopefully look back at that date, just like we looked back at the date of Cora Rosen's diary from 1925 to get a feel for what was happening. Um, just the technology we have today, too. Like I talked about videotaping it on my smartphone. I talked about the TV stations getting really excited about it and being able to watch the eclipse as it was heading through Mexico and Texas. Folks in 1925 weren't able to do that. And who knows how people in 2144 are going to be able to watch the eclipse. So it's, I think, really important to document, in addition to your phones, document it in writing. And again, if you post it on social media, that's wonderful too. But social media pages are not going to be archived and saved, as well as a diary that might get left in a drawer and found by your family and maybe preserved by your family, as was the case of Cora Rosen's, or in your town historian's office, or a town archive somewhere, where this is, in my opinion, technology is great and digital things are all wonderful, but nothing's going to replace the actual physical diary that someone can pick up in 2144 and read. And look back and say, hey, I wonder what Rob Goller was thinking about the eclipse. And they'll find exactly what I was doing and that reaction. And hopefully that connection, this event of an eclipse is connecting me with the people in 2144, just like I felt like I was connected to people in 1925, despite all the changes in technology. And just the differences in technology and how we watch the eclipse. The eclipse is sort of a way to learn about history and science all at the same time, and how we've changed a little bit. And how we receive news was a big thing. How we um, uh, uh, process the media. They didn't even have, a lot of people didn't, they were just starting to get radios in their houses in the 1920s. So they may have been listening to the radio back then, but newspapers would have been a way they got the news. There would have been no internet. There would have been no, simulated paths of the eclipse. So we've changed in our technology. in regard to that. But what I find fascinating, and I did not appreciate this until yesterday, when I was in the middle of that eclipse. And if you do watch the video that I shared on the page, I do apologize. Well, maybe I shouldn't apologize. I was really excited. I'll be honest. I said wow several times. Um, and I just could not, I think I just could not believe that we were actually seeing it when we had kind of resigned ourselves to not seeing it. So I was like, really, as many of you probably were who saw it, were just in the moment. And part of me was like, I don't know if I should put this out on the internet. I'm like, nope, that's my history. That was what happened. Even though I got overly excited about this wonderful thing that was happening in the sky above us. Um, so uh, so that recording is part of the history, and I'm going to save it. So I know folks have asked me how do we save our history. Um, about the eclipse, what has happened, and that was the case in 1925. There was so much coverage of the eclipse before it happened, and then after it happened, everybody's like, "Oh, it's over with." Um, we don't have to worry. We don't really have to worry about it. It happened. It was exciting. But I don't find that after the fact, the media, even the big media, like there'll be an article in the New York Times and the Buffalo News actually in 1925 had a ton of stuff about it, and today they do. Um, but some newspapers don't. They'll just say it happened. Um, and I know our local media is planning to cover it after the fact. But a lot of times when you'll read in history, you'll read in an old newspaper, they'll have a notice about a meeting or an event ahead of time. They'll say, next Thursday, and it could be something as mundane as a women's club meeting or the library board meeting, and they'll say it's coming up. But then after the meeting, they won't tell you, there will be no report in the paper about what happened. So with an eclipse, the same thing kind of happened. So take some time to write down what happened to you during the eclipse. I guarantee you, if you haven't started a journal, this might be a good time to start one. Like the eclipse could be the reason why you start a journal. It doesn't have to be every day. Some of the best journals we have in the town archives, the people didn't write every single day, but I try to. But you could just, I think it's a good thing that people will look back to. They're going to say, oh, what did great grandma so and so think about the eclipse? And just like we did, look back in a journal. Um, and I think it's important to record, take the time, even though it might be harder to do because we're beyond the excitement period. It already happened. To record what happened. And think about how much your words are going to mean to somebody in 2144 or even in sooner than that, when they get to experience an eclipse and to see what our reaction was to it. So take the time to look back and record what happened, not what is going to happen. Because sometimes, if you were to believe the hype if we only had the before eclipse media coverage to go off of when we're looking at history, well, it's drastically different than what actually happened. And I'll tell you what actually happened for me and my neighbors yesterday. I never would have imagined would have happened. If you would have read my journal entry, it's going to be interesting. I would love to hear the reaction of someone in 2144 to my journal because very pessimistic in the morning, my journal entry, and then last night's was totally different. Um, and literally within 5 to 10 seconds, that all changed my whole perspective about it. So hopefully they'll get that out of my entries in the journal. So keep a journal, number one, and save any videos you have or photographs separately. Don't just keep them on your phone. Label them Eclipse. Print some out and put them in your journal or a scrapbook. All those digital files, it's made our lives so much easier. We don't have to go to the Kodak photomat store and have or send them off in the mail to have them developed. But we have lots of photos and videos, but they end up stuck on our phone. And this is one time where we need to pull them off the phone and we need to actually make some prints of some of them and put them maybe with your journal of people that were around you at the time. So photographs and videos that can match what you wrote in your journal. This is the time where you print something out because I don't think digital files are going to be saved like a physical file that might end up in a book that gets discovered someday, or if you pass it down in your family. That's just my sense. I know we're all about digital today, but it ends up being we have way too many photographs and digital files that no one's ever going to be able to sort through, as opposed to discovering 4 or 5 really good prints of a photograph, or if you have a CD, or CD's old-fashioned, but a thumb drive or some way that people can watch a video and save it with the actual physical documentation that you have. Um, this happens with scrapbooks all the time. We have a wonderful scrapbooks that people go through looking for what happened in history, and eclipses are one of those things that get put in scrapbooks, the clippings from newspapers, but the digital files I don't think will have a lasting effect. So that's my suggestion for you, is to write down your thoughts of what happened while they're fresh in your head, because people in the future are going to care. They're going to care about what our experience with the great eclipse of 19 I'm sorry, I almost said 1925 of 2024 was like. So please record that history, and try to match the hype that was beforehand. Try to match that now, at least for the amount of time it takes you to record it for those future generations. So again, if you haven't checked it out yet, please check out the video of my experience with the eclipse, especially if you didn't have the same opportunity to see what we did. It was definitely a wonderful experience, and sharing it with people who were just as excited about it. It was pretty awesome. So please check that out, and make sure you get a diary out and record what you experienced, and save it in an important place. Thanks again for joining me. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad your comments, please keep them coming. I'm glad the comments, these videos are so well received that you feel the need to write to me. I really appreciate that, especially if you have something to offer, especially comments and questions. I get topic ideas from you, so keep them coming. Thanks again for everything. We'll see you next week. And until then, thank you for keeping history alive. Take care.